The City of Cape Town says it'll cost up to 8 billion rand to build wastewater treatment plants to stop sewage being pumped into the ocean. Up to 32 million litres of untreated sewage has been pumped into Cape Town's protected areas at Greenpoint, Point and Hout Bay. That's every day. Joining us to tell us more about how the city plans to stop this or deal with this, Dr. Zahid Badroodien is the Water and Sanitation MMC in Cape Town. Dr. Badroodien, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. I mean, these are shocking numbers to me, but to you as someone working in the sector, how shocking is it?
Not that shocking, actually, to understand the fact that some of these marine outfalls that you've mentioned were built way back in 1977 as a means to manage the effluent in certain parts of our city. As you've mentioned, Camps Bay, Greenpoint and Hout Bay, all coastal areas very far from already existing wastewater treatment works. And at that stage in 1977, 1993, acceptable engineering means to dispose of the wastewater in those particular areas. But as we know, times have changed and more effort needs to be undertaken in terms of protecting our environment and protecting the health of our residents and making sure that both residents and tourists are able to enjoy our coastal spaces. The city recognizes that more can be done to at least introduce some form of treatment at these marine outfalls which are currently in existence. And that is the process that we are currently undertaking at this moment together with the stakeholders that we engage with.
So, and I'm speaking obviously as a layperson here and someone who is just reading up on the topic for the purpose of our interview, but it seems like there are certain measurements, right, insofar as this pumping of sewage is concerned. There's a measurement of organic nitrogen, ammonia nitrogen contained in sewage. Those measurements met the requirements at the time that the measurements were taken. But these designated marine outfalls, all three of them that we've just mentioned, are exempt from measurements of fecal bacteria. That sounds the alarm, doesn't it?
So we must keep in mind that these criteria are obviously determined by the Department of Water and Sanitation. It's not something that any local government within the country identifies for themselves. So when we consider those criteria as is determined for us to measure, we meet the necessary criteria. So much so that in 2022, 2 out of the 3 marine outfalls actually were awarded Green Drop Awards by the National Department of Water and Sanitation. But it's exactly the point that you're making. The fact that there are these various chemicals, bacteria and so on that is present in the effluent, naturally so, throughout the city in any of our wastewater treatment works. And so importantly, we've recognized that in terms of best practice internationally, other cities that make use of marine outfalls as well, but also looking internally and listening to the scientific community that we work with and that we consult on a regular basis, the message is clear. It's not acceptable for us to discharge untreated wastewater through the 3 marine outfalls, and also speaks directly to the commitment that the mayor made when he was elected in 2021, that we do have a responsibility to clean up our waterways and essentially our coastal spaces as well. So we are now at the very beginning of that process where the consultants have put together 3 options. We've taken those 3 options to a workshop with our scientific community, Water and Sanitation Portfolio Committee, our Section 80 Committee on Water Quality in waterways here in the city, where we've presented them very early on these 3 options. Options that look at either improving in the short immediate term the infrastructure already in place at those particular marine outfalls, but then also looking at whether it's possible, feasible for us to build decentralized wastewater treatment works adjacent to these marine outfalls, which could then introduce some form of treatment, or then alternatively looking at piping these marine outfalls to already existing wastewater treatment works in the city. And then you can imagine that's a massive engineering project, or extending the existing pipeline already in place in the ocean further out to sea so that it can have more of a protective measure. This is some of the options which we're looking into at the moment.
Yeah, so those different options that you've just outlined, they range in price from about 2.2 billion to 7.3 billion rand. One of the things that you've mentioned talks about extending those pipelines. So essentially, I imagine pushing the sewage further out to sea. Again, I'm speaking as a layperson, but that comes in at a price tag of around 2.2 to 2.6 billion. Which of these options do you reckon, at least in the short to medium term, is more likely that you would take?
We know that in the short, immediate term, number one is to invest in our infrastructure. That will cost about 100 million rand, and this is upgrades to what already exists. The screening facilities, civil and electrical engineering facilities at the marine outfall as it exists.
Right.
No option has yet been identified. That will go through the consultation process. Importantly, we've brought our stakeholders very early on into that, and once a decision is made in terms of what is most viable, considering their inputs, we'll then once again take that to our stakeholders. But the fact of the matter here is that we recognize that for a long time, the city's position on this was that this is an acceptable approach. But as we've now come to learn and as we accept, we must do more to improve the way we discharge at our marine outfits. I
imagine environmentalists will be keeping a close eye on the process as it unfolds, as we will do as well right here on 405. Dr. Zahid Badroodien, MMC for Water and Sanitation in Cape Town. Thanks very much indeed.